Namaskar. The topic which I am going to deliver lecture is on terrain evaluation. The entire topic is divided into 8 modules. It starts with introduction, followed by terrain classification, then general principles of evaluation of terrains, the aims of land evaluation, principles, levels of intensity and approaches, the nature of the framework, and finally conclusions. Now, let me start with the introduction. Terrain evaluation is the complete appraisal of the capabilities and limitations of an area of ground in relation to a particular kind of land use. The most widely used technique for surveys is based on analysis of the ground, usually by means of air photo interpretation, leading to the identification of mapping units. The units recognized in this way are areas of ground whose recognizable form and observable characteristics results from the interaction of climate, geology and land forming processes. This means that where a terrain type can be identified in a new area, the soil conditions will be identical with those of the type area. Thus, by defining the soil conditions of interest, for example, to the engineer for a representative range of terrain units, it is possible to appraise the engineering conditions of a large area. The concept of survey by land classification was first described by Christian in the year 1958. After it had been developed and used in Australia to express the agricultural potential of ground. Subsequently, the concepts were expanded and modified in the United Kingdom by the Department of Agriculture at Oxford University, working under contract to the Ministry of Defence. The development of this work has been summarized in a paper by Webster and Beckett in the year 1970. Similar studies had been made in South Africa and Australia, and in the year 1964, a joint meeting was held to define a common system of nomenclature. This system recognizes several categories of terrain, each defined by a combination of climate, geology and landform. The units are in decreasing order of size, that is land zone, land division, land province, land region, land system, land facet and land element. For completeness, the whole classification is outlined here, although for most purposes users are only concerned with the lowest 3 units in the hierarchy. It is convenient to describe these 3 units first, as they constitute the basis of the classification from which the higher units are derived. The second module of this talk is terrain classification. Knowledge of the terrain where harvesting operations are to take place will assist to manage such operations safe and productively. The 3 important factors to consider in terrain classification that could have an impact on harvesting productivity are ground strength, that is bearing capacity. Ground strength is a measure of the bearing capacity of the soil. It affects the productivity of machines and also indicates the potential level of environmental damage that can be caused. Surface roughness. Surface roughness is a measure of the size and distribution of in-field obstacles. It directly affects machine stability, access and travel speeds. Slope. Slope is one of the primary determinants of system selection and also affects travel speeds and machine stability. 5 slope classes are recognized by the National Terrain Classification System. They are as follows. Slope class with gradient percentage. Slope 1 means 0 to 12%. Slope 2 is 13 to 20%. Slope 3 is 21 to 35%. Slope 4 is 36 to 50%. Slope 5 is 51% and onwards. For practical purposes, 3 slope descriptions are used to determine machine suitability for harvesting operations. These practical classes are as shown as follows. Slope flat means 0 to 20%, semi-steep means 21 to 35%, steep means 35% and above gradient. Slope considerations. The gradient of a slope is measured in degrees or percentage. General principles of evaluation of terrains. The nature and principles of land evaluation. General decisions on land use have always been part of the evolution of human society. In the past, land use changes often came about by gradual evolution as the result of many separate decisions taken by individuals. In the more crowded and complex world of the present, they are frequently brought about by the process of land use planning. Such planning takes place in all parts of the world, including both developing and developed countries. It may be concerned with putting environmental resources to new kinds of productive use. The need for land use planning is frequently brought about, however, by changing needs and pressures involving competing uses for the same land. The function of land use planning is to guide decisions on land use in such a way that the resources of the environment are put to the most beneficial use for man, while at the same time conserving those resources for the future. This planning must be based on an understanding both of the natural environment and of the kinds of land use envisaged. There have been many examples of damage to natural resources and of unsuccessful land use enterprises through failure to take account of the mutual relationships between land and the uses to which it is put. It is a function of land evaluation to bring about such understanding and to present planners with comparisons of the most promising kinds of land use. Land evaluation is concerned with the assessment of land performance when used for specified purposes. It involves the execution and interpretation of basic surveys of climate, soils, vegetation and other aspects of land in terms of the requirements of alternative forms of land use. To be of value in planning, the range of land uses considered has to be limited to those which are relevant within the physical, economic and social context of the area considered, and the comparisons must incorporate economic considerations. The fourth module of this talk is the aims of land evaluation. Land evaluation may be considered with present land performance. Frequently, however, it involves change and its effects, with change in the use of land and in some cases change in the land itself. Evaluation takes into consideration the economics of the proposed enterprises, the social consequences for the people of the area and the country concerned, and the consequences beneficial or adverse for the environment. Thus, land evaluation should answer the following questions. They are: how is the land currently managed and what will happen if present practices remain unchanged? What improvements in management practices within the present use are possible? What other uses of land are physically possible and economically and socially relevant? Which of these uses offer possibilities of sustained production or other benefits? What adverse effects, physical, economic or social, are associated with each use? What recurrent input are necessary to bring about the desired production and minimize the adverse effects? What are the benefits of each form of use? If the introduction of a new use involves significant change in the land itself, as for example in irrigation schemes, then the following additional questions should be answered. That is, what changes in the condition of land are feasible and necessary and how can they be brought about? What non-recurrent inputs are necessary to implement these changes? The evaluation process does not in itself determine the land use changes that are to be carried out, but provides data on the basis of which such decisions can be taken. To be effective in this role, the output from an evaluation normally gives information on two or more potential forms of use for each area of land, including the consequences, beneficial and adverse of each. Land evaluation and land use planning. Land evaluation is only part of the process of land use planning. Its precise role varies in different circumstances. In the present context, it is sufficient to represent the land use planning process by the following generalized sequence of activities and decisions. They are recognition of a need for change, identification of aims, formulation of proposals involving alternative forms of land use and recognition of their main requirements, recognition and delineation of the different types of land present in the area, comparison and evaluation of each type of land for the different uses, selection of a preferred use for each type of land, project design or other detailed analysis of a selected set of alternatives for distinct parts of the area. This is in certain cases may take form of a feasibility study. Next is decision to implement and implementation. Monitoring of the operation. Land evaluation plays a major part in stage 3, 4 and 5 of the above sequence and contributes information to the subsequent activities. Thus, land evaluation is preceded by the recognition of the need for some change in the use to which land is put. This may be the development of new productive uses such as agricultural development schemes or forestry plantations, or the provision of services such as the designation of a national park or recreational area. Recognition of this need is followed by identification of the aims of the proposed change and formulation of general and specific proposals. The evaluation process itself includes description of a range of promising kinds of use and the assessment and comparison of these with respect to each type of land identified in the area. This leads to recommendations involving one or a small number of preferred kinds of use. These recommendations can then be used in making decisions on the preferred kinds of land use for each distinct part of the area. Later stages will usually involve further detailed analysis of the preferred uses followed. If the decision to go ahead is made by the implementation of the development project or other form of change and monitoring of the resulting systems. The next module of this talk is the principles of terrain evaluation. Certain principles are fundamental to the approach and methods employed in land evaluation. These basic principles are as follows. Land suitability is assessed and classified with respect to specified kinds of use. This principle embodies recognition of the fact that different kinds of land use have different requirements. As an example, an alluvial floodplain with impeded drainage might be highly suitable for rice cultivation, but not suitable for many forms of agriculture or for forestry. The concept of land suitability is only meaningful in terms of specific kinds of land use, each with their own requirements. For example, for soil moisture, rooting, depth, etc. The qualities of each type of land such as moisture availability or liability to flooding are compared with the requirements of each use. Thus, the land itself and the land use are equally fundamental to land suitability evaluation. The next principle is evaluation requires a comparison of the benefits obtained and the inputs needed on different types of land. Land in itself without input rarely, if ever, possesses productive potential. Even the collection of wild fruits requires labor, whilst the use of natural wilderness for nature conservation requires measures for its protection. Suitability for each use is assessed by comparing the required input such as labor, fertilizers or road constructions with the goods produced or other benefits obtained. Next principle is a multidisciplinary approach is required. The evaluation process requires contributions from the fields of natural science, the technology of land use, economics and sociology. In particular, suitability evaluation always incorporates economic considerations to a great or lesser extent. In qualitative evaluation, economics may be employed in general terms only, without calculation of costs and returns. In quantitative evaluation, the comparison of benefits and inputs in economic terms plays a major part in the determination of suitability. It follows that a team carrying out an evaluation requires a range of specialists. These will usually include natural scientists, for example, geomorphologists, soil surveyors, ecologists, specialists in the technology of the forms of land use under consideration. Example, agronomists, foresters, irrigation engineers, experts in livestock management, economists and sociologists. There may be need to be some combining of these functions for practical reasons, but the principle of multidisciplinary activity encompassing studies of land, land use, social aspects and economics remains. The next principle is the evaluation is made in terms relevant to the physical, economic and social context of the area concerned. Such factors as the regional climate, levels of living of the population, availability and cost of labor, need for employment, the local or export markets, systems of land tenure which are socially and politically acceptable and availability of capital form the context within which evaluation takes place. It would, for example, be unrealistic to say that land was suitable for non-mechanized rice cultivation, requiring large amounts of low-cost labor in a country with high labor costs. The assumptions underlying evaluation will differ from one country to another and to some extent between different areas of the same country. Many of these factors are often implicitly assumed to avoid misunderstanding and to assist in comparisons between different areas. Such assumptions should be explicitly stated. The next principle is the suitability refers to use on a sustained basis. The aspect of environmental degradation is taken into account when assessing suitability. There might, for example, be forms of land use which appear to be highly profitable in the short run, but were likely to lead to soil erosion, progressive pasture degradation or adverse changes in river regimes downstream. Such consequences would outweigh the short-term profitability and cause the land to be classed as not suitable for such purposes. The principle by no means requires that the environment should be preserved in a completely unaltered state. Agriculture normally involves clearance of any natural vegetation present, and normally soil fertility under arable cropping is higher or lower depending on management, but rarely at the same level as under the virginal vegetation. What is required is that for any proposed form of land use, the probable consequences for the environment should be assessed as accurately as possible and such assessments taken into consideration in determining suitability. The next principle is the evaluation involves comparison of more than a single kind of use. This comparison could be, for example, between agriculture and forestry, between two or more different farming systems, or between individual crops. Often, it will include comparing the existing uses with possible changes, either to new kinds of use or modifications to the existing uses. Occasionally, a proposed form of use will be compared with non-use, that is, leaving the land in its unaltered state, but the principle of comparison remains. Evaluation is only reliable if benefits and inputs from any given kind of use can be compared with at least one and usually several different alternatives. If only one use is considered, there is the danger that whilst the land may indeed be suitable for that use, some other and more beneficial use may be ignored. Next module is the levels of intensity and approaches. Certain groups of activities are common to all types of land evaluation. In all cases, evaluation commences with initial consultations concerned with the objectives of the evaluation, assumptions and constraints, and the methods to be followed. Details of subsequent activities and the sequence in which they are carried out vary with circumstances. These circumstances include the level of intensity of the survey and which of two overall approaches is followed. Levels of intensity. Three levels of intensity may be distinguished: reconnaissance, semi-detailed and detailed. These are normally reflected in the scales of resulting maps. Reconnaissance surveys are concerned with broad inventory of resources and development possibility at regional and national scales. Economic analysis is only in very general terms, and the land evaluation is qualitative. The results contribute to national plans, permitting the selection of development areas and priorities. Surveys at the semi-detailed or intermediate level are concerned with more specific aims such as feasibility studies of development projects. The work may include farm surveys. Economic analysis is considerably more important, and land evaluation is usually quantitative. This level provides information for decisions on the selection of projects or whether a particular development or other change is to go ahead. The detailed level covers surveys for actual planning and design or farm planning and advice, often carried out after the decision to implement has been made. Two-stage and parallel approaches to land evaluation. The relationships of resource surveys and economic and social analysis and the manner in which the kinds of land use are formulated depend on which the following approaches to land evaluation is adopted. A two-stage approach in which the first stage is mainly concerned with qualitative land evaluation, later, although not necessarily, followed by a second stage consisting of economic and social analysis. A parallel approach in which analysis of the relationships between land and land use proceeds concurrently with economic and social analysis. The two-stage approach is often used in resource inventories for broad planning purposes and in studies for the assessment of biological productive potential. The land suitability classifications in the first stage are based on the suitability of the land for kinds of land use which are selected at the beginning of the survey. Example: arable cropping, dairy farming, maize, tomatoes. The contribution of economic and social analysis to the first stage is limited to a check on the relevance of the kind of land use. After the first stage has been completed and its results presented in map and report form, these results may then be subject to the second stage, that of economic and social analysis, either immediately or after an interval of time. In the parallel approach, the economic and social analysis of the kinds of land use proceeds simultaneously with the survey and the assessment of physical factors. The kinds of use to which the evaluation refers are usually modified in the course of the study. In the case of arable farming, for example, this modification may include selection of crops and rotations, estimates of the inputs of capital and labor, and determination of optimum farm size. Similarly, in forestry, it may include, for example, selection of tree species, dates of thinning and felling, and required protective measures. This procedure is mostly favored for specific proposals in connection with development projects and at semi-detailed and detailed levels of intensity. The parallel approach is expected to give more precise results in a shorter period of time. It offers a better chance of concentrating survey and data collection activities on producing information needed for the evaluation. However, that two-stage approach appears more straightforward, possessing a clear-cut sequence of activities. The physical resource surveys precede economic and social analysis, without overlap, hence permitting a more flexible timing of activities and of staff recruitment. The next module of this talk is the nature of the framework. The framework does not by itself constitute an evaluation system. The range of possible uses of land and purpose of evaluation is so wide that no one system could hope to take account of them. Besides, such obvious contrasts as those of climate, differences in such matters as the availability and cost of labor, availability of capital, population density and levels of living will all cause differences of detail and emphasis in the evaluation of land. It was recognition of this situation coupled with the need for some degree of standardization or compatibility which led to the concept of framework for land evaluation. The framework is a set of principles and concepts on the basis of which local, national or regional evaluation systems can be constructed. Thus, the framework is not an evaluation manual. It does not, for example, specify such matters as limiting slope angles or soil moisture requirements for particular kinds of land use. Since such values can never have universal applicability, instead the framework sets out a number of principles involved in land evaluation, some basic concepts, the structure of a suitability classification and the procedures necessary to carry out a land suitability evaluation. The last module of this talk is the conclusions. Land use is best managed by terrain evaluation. Terrain evaluation is defined by a combination of climate, geology and landform, ground strength, surface roughness and slope are the criteria for the classification of terrain. Terrain evaluation takes into consideration the economics of the proposed enterprises, the social consequences for the people of the area and the country concerned, and the consequences beneficial or adverse for the environment. Land evaluation involves two-stage and parallel approaches. Terrain evaluation is an important approach for the maximum utilization of the land. Thank you.